Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first session of our Kinship Town Hall. We are thrilled to see you all here. We know we'll probably have some more people trickling in, but we are really excited to have you all join us for the start of this conversation. So thank you for being here. My name is Amanda Klein-Cox, and I am a Senior Research Associate at UNC Chapel Hill, as well as the Project Implementation Manager for Kin Carolina. And we're really honored that you chose to spend your morning in what we know is a very busy season with us. We'll get started. So as you may know, this is one of 3 sessions we'll be running this week, one each day, but at different times to try and capture different groups of people's schedules. Today, we'll be talking about the journey of kinship care. Tomorrow, peer support and action. And on Thursday, we'll be talking about kinship experiences in research. And we will be lifting up the voices of stakeholders from our program and definitely want to hear yours as well. And just a reminder, your registration gives you access to all 3 of these. So you should have received emails with a different link for each day. So our agenda today, we will do a little bit of introductions all together using Poll Everywhere, and I'll share the instructions for that in a minute. We want to hear from you about what you know about kinship care. And then we are honored to have our project director, Dr. Ramona Denby-Brinson, here to give us an overview of kinship care. We'll tell you a little bit about Kin Carolina, although we'll talk about that more in subsequent sessions. And then you're really going to get to put yourself in the shoes of a kinship caregiver. And we are honored to have our peer liaison, Ms. Teresa here, who is going to be our star in our simulation today. Then we'll do some reflections and close out. So these are our learning objectives. So we will, at the end of this session, you should be able to explain what kinship care is and its historical significance, identify risk and protective factors present within kinship families, and describe at least 3 challenges that kinship caregivers face when navigating systems of support. All right, so we want to hear about you. Oh, I don't want to work with me. Okay, here we go. So we want to see where everyone is from. So you should be able to tap if you're on your phone or click if you're on your computer. Whoa, lots of people from the Carolinas. Yeah, if you're outside of the States, definitely click outside. Sorry, the global map would have been a little too big. Definitely a lot of East Coasters here today. Great, lots of Carolina folks today. Thank you all for joining us. Okay, well, it's exciting. As you know, we do have our program is based in South Carolina, but we were really excited to expand our programming today for the rest of the country. Would love to know how you are connected to kinship care, and there are some more responses if you need to scroll down. Lots of people who work with or support kinship caregivers, people who have kinship family or kinship care in their family. Love it. Thank you. Now we would like to just do a little kind of pre-assessment, if you will. No stakes, though. What do you already know about kinship care? You don't have to write a book for us, but let's in a nutshell, what do you know about kinship care? And if you don't, that's okay too. I love the honesty. Don't know much about it. Well, you will after today. Thank you for joining us. I'm actually really excited that people are admitting that they don't know too much about kinship care, because that means today we'll be able to have a great conversation and hopefully give you some information about it. And sometimes we know the term or we don't know the term, but I bet once we start talking, you'll think of some people who fit this criteria. It is hard. People expect family to step up. Absolutely. I love the excitement. We're excited to have you. Absolutely. And I think that the last couple of responses here are a perfect cue or perfect queuing up our next section. So definitely kinship care is when a family member or close friend steps up to care for children who need a safe place to live. So I'm going to keep this moving, but thank you. We'll have some more questions later too. These are great responses and we appreciate the the honesty. I am very honored to get to introduce our keynote speaker. I thought about this morning. Even though I know her well, I don't often get an opportunity to introduce her. Dr. Ramona Denby Brinson is the Dean and Wallace H. Carroll Senior Distinguished Professor of Public Welfare Policy and Administration at UNC Chapel Hill School of Social Work. She is also the project director for Kin Carolina and the visionary behind the Kinship Town Hall. So I hope we are bringing her vision to life. Dr. Denby Brinson has served as dean since August 2021, and her academic career spans nearly 3 decades, including leadership roles at Ohio State, Arizona State University, in associate dean roles. She has over 27 years of experience as the lead researcher or methodologist on federal, state, and foundation-funded research and evaluation studies. To date, Dr. Denby Brinson has been awarded more than $35 million in competitive grants, including the one that supports this work from the Duke Endowments. She is recognized as a preeminent national expert on culturally adapted child welfare services and has co-authored 5 or edited 5 books. Dr. Denby Brinson is also the president and has served as treasurer for the Society for Social Work and Research, known as SWOR. She's a licensed social worker, and prior to her academic career, she served with over 10 years of direct experience with children and families in various social service settings, including medical social work, substance use disorders, counseling, family counseling, and public guardianship. But more importantly, she is just a wonderful human being and cares so deeply about kinship care and the people who care about it. So I'm honored to present Dr. Denby Brinson.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate the introduction. I think I'm gonna have to change that bio a little bit because I'm not sure how I feel about the 3 decades part of that. It seems like I get older each time each time that bio is read. So I think I'm gonna have to do a little bit of editing. But I do appreciate your kind words and the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. This is such a treat to be with you all. We have been eagerly awaiting this town hall, and for one simple reason, and that's you all. We imagined many months ago the opportunity to bring folks together, people of like mind, who every day champion families and children and work to strengthen them so that we get the best outcomes for our kids and families. And so we are so honored to be in community with you all for the next 3 days. And I want to, before we jump into the presentation and the talk, just thank you all. But also, I just want to acknowledge the work of the incredible group of people that I get to work with. You've met Amanda Klein-Cox. You will meet the other members of our team. But when I tell you they are the most dedicated people, it's no exaggeration. Being able to deliver an intervention and a study of this magnitude takes a lot of work. And we have such a talented team, but I think what makes them so good is that this is not about a job. This is really a work of the heart, as one of my colleagues has coined the expression. They pour into our families' lives every day. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you all know that you have colleagues, a team of champions that are out here working every day on behalf of our children and families. We also have incredible kinship liaisons. You will meet some of them over the course of the next 3 days, but these individuals give it their all. Not only are they taking care of their own families, but they are serving the community through this project and helping other caregivers that are also along this journey with them. We have incredible community-based partners, local nonprofits in Columbia, South Carolina, in the Low Country, all over that we are especially appreciative of. Kindred Hearts is one of our partners that's been with us from day one, and they do remarkable work in the community. And so we're so grateful. Our advisory board, you'll get a chance to meet some members of that board. Again, dedicated group of community leaders who lend community voice and the lived experience perspective to this work. So appreciative of them. Amanda has already acknowledged our funders. I would like to also give another special acknowledgement to the Duke Endowment, who has generously supported this work and would not have been possible without their support. And then finally, just to you all, I love to see, I think we're well over 200 folks now that have logged in, and I love the introductions because you get to see that we are a diverse group of practitioners, family members, community members. I think the one thing that connects all of us is that we are a community of people who are dedicated to supporting children and families. So thank you all so much. Where I wanted to go with this talk, you're going to hear so much good stuff over the next 3 days. The best part will be when you hear from our kinship caregivers and our liaisons themselves. But kind of what we wanted to do here this morning is do a little bit of framing about kinship care. I love the fact that we represent a wide spectrum of folks with respect to knowledge of kinship care, because as Amanda said, that will make for a rich discussion. But just to kind of frame our work, we'll start with a little discussion about the importance of kinship care. We'll talk about the journey that is typical for a lot of families, but also talk about the uniqueness of the experience too. We'll move into a little bit of a discussion about how kinship care connects to the child welfare system and just walk you through just a bit of history, just a brief historical overview, and then kind of frame our discussion towards the end from a policy and a practice lens. And so, like kinship care as a practice, the policy has evolved too in recent years. There have been some policies favorable to our families and some that are still a work in progress. And so we're going to talk a lot about that and then end with the discussion of the practice of kinship care. So this is just we start with just, family taking care of family. When that question was posed earlier, you saw on the chat and you saw reflected in some of the answers to the poll questions, a framing very close to this one too. I think what I want to emphasize on this slide here is when we think about kinship care, goes by lots of different expressions. Some people call it relative caregiving. Some call it taking care of our own. So no matter what language you are accustomed to, I think what stands out is that it really is about a relationship. It's a natural relationship formed by a bond and a connection and a commitment, motivated to see the best outcomes for kids. And so part of why we like this framing here is that it hits on the notion that this is a relationship, a natural relationship, and it is a practice that comes into play when children are not able to be cared for or reared by their biological parents. And so extended family, sometimes fictive kin, meaning that maybe not necessarily connected through a blood relationship, but still connected through a heart relationship, a bond, an adult who steps up to take care of a child as well. So I wanted to just kind of give us a sense of just the prevalence of kinship care. As Amanda indicated, you may have interface with relative caregivers, kinship families in your professional settings and may not even know it. Sometimes families obviously don't necessarily walk up and introduce themselves to you as kinship caregivers, but it is a prevalent practice across the United States. We estimate that about 8 million children currently reside with a relative. Of that 8 million children, about 2.65, neither of the biological parents is in the home or responsible for the day-to-day child rearing. And with respect to the child welfare system, we think about 141,000 of the children that are currently in care are being cared for by a relative caregiver. And so what this gives you is a sense that this is a very common practice. And we'll talk in a second about the difference between informal and formal. But no matter the form, a very common practice for our families across the United States. So the different types of kinship care arrangements, and before we kind of compare and contrast these, I do want to say what most of these arrangements have in common. These are relative caregivers who most of the time have willingly, voluntarily stepped up. They are motivated to care for their relatives' children, often referred to as the invisible resource, the invisible workforce, invisible labor, because these are individuals who are rearing their relatives' children, and most of the time, because they're informal kinship caregiver arrangements, they're doing so without any type of compensation or support. And so, again, we refer to them as a tremendous hidden resource in our community. We also, what we find in both of these arrangements here, formal and informal, we are of the mindset, and research bears this out, that we can't begin to achieve healthy child outcomes or positive child outcomes or child well-being without focus and attention on the caregiver. A child's well-being is inextricably tied to the caregiver's well-being. And so often we forget to focus our efforts and our support on the caregiver. And so part of what we want the takeaway to be for you today is an appreciation of the importance of the caregiver role and how it's tied to outcomes around kids, and the importance of supporting the caregiver. And so, back to just quickly, a lot has been written and said about formal versus informal kinship care. We're just going to throw this out as a way so that we're on the same page over the next 3 days. But we realize that these definitions can vary depending on context, depending on state law, as well too. But when we say formal kinship care, here we're typically referring to caregivers and children who are tied to the public child welfare system in some type of fashion. And so that could be either as a licensed foster parent, they may be pursuing guardianship or adoption as a permanency plan initiated by a public child welfare authority. There's usually formal systems involved, caseworkers, family courts that are involved in this process. Compared to informal kinship care, again, the most prevalent type of kinship care, most kinship care families will never come to the attention of child welfare. They just won't. Most kinship families go about their day-to-day life, caring for their relatives' children, and they will never engage in formal help seeking. So we know that a lot of them, while they may avail themselves of supports through the vast array of child and family services, many will never come to the attention of child welfare, public child welfare. And some do have legal custody of their relatives' children. Some may be legal guardians. Some may receive TANF support or non-needy caretaker. But for the most part, these are private agreements brokered between the biological parent and their relative. And this is the type of family arrangement that our research has found, and others, that receives the fewest amounts of supports and attention, but still are deserving of those things as well. So again, just for the sake of time, I'm just gonna kind of go through this history. If anyone is interested in these slides, we can make arrangements to share them out later. But what's important here is to recognize that the tension between the systems of care and child welfare systems over time. Historically, when we think about child welfare more broadly, we think about the colonial era, where most of our services and supports were rather informal. As we have evolved and we began to move to present day, we see the appearance of public systems and government systems where there are rules and regulations abound. And most of what we do in terms of how we intervene with families is built into state statute and federal law. And this has some effect on support and payment and other provisions that we'll talk about in a second. What we wanted to pinpoint today is the current, where we are currently with respect to more typically referred to as formal kinship care or child welfare. Again, it's almost impossible to have a discussion about kinship care without contextually basing it within a discussion of the public child welfare system. So there have been times in our history where the pendulum has swung all the way to children's rights versus parental rights. And you see that represented all through the law, through ASPA, through various child welfare laws. Now, where we are, some would say we are in a point of reckoning in our child welfare system where there is a loud and resounding call for social reform, that we reform child welfare policy, we reform the way that we intervene with children and families, all the way to the other side where others are arguing for more governmental responsibility in the lives and oversight of children and families. So we present these as contrasting elements because much of this speaks to the tension and we believe the lack of support and focus and attention on relative caregivers too, depending on the policies we're following or the laws or the community traditions. We actually believe, and we'll talk about that towards the end, that kinship care is a response to much of this tension because it actually satisfies many conditions in terms of recognizing families, putting families first, keeping children protected and safe, and also being a resource for our formal systems. And so, again, just briefly, these are some of the more recent federal legislation that pertain to kinship care. For many years, we did not have policy at the federal level favorable to kinship caregivers, and some would argue that we are still trying to get there. But some do acknowledge that Families First was the first piece of federal legislation that began to hint at any level of credible support for relative caregivers. And what it did, it established and expanded kinship navigator programs, which is a support process that helps relative caregivers identify resources and avail themselves of resources in their local communities. It actually helped with some of the foster care licensing rules that were too restrictive, overly restrictive of relatives, align those standards to be more sensitive and paired with the needs of relative caregivers, supported family engagement models and interventions. Most recently, Protecting America's Children by Strengthening Families Act is probably one of the most favorable pieces of legislation that we have in the realm of kinship care. A lot of this is still speculation because we have not seen the full implementation of this measure and been able to measure any outcomes as a result of it. But in terms of the language, people are hopeful that it will advance a level of support to caregivers in particular through the Navigator model and family support programs. So now I want to just pivot a little bit to a discussion of well-being. I keep alluding to this notion of well-being. And so we know that at least with the formal child welfare system, the three big goals, there are three big goals. The big goals are to establish permanency for children. The second goal is to look at their safety, um, as well as you can tie into that just the initial reasons that they came into the attention of the child welfare system and try to mitigate some of that. And then ultimately, well-being, which is the indicator here on the slide that we want to spend a little bit of time talking about. And so again, permanency in the long run, where will the children be? Who will care for them until they are of an adult age? Their protection, often safeguarding them and mitigating the effects of the original reason for removal. And then what well-being. Of these three goals, big system goals, well-being is the one that has received the I think fewest amount of dollars. It's safe to argue that in terms of our federal policy. and not as much focus on the others. Historically, we've been focused on the protection, and rightfully so. We want our children to grow up in safe and loving homes. We've been focused on permanency, but less on well-being. So our practice as a community and as professionals have shifted in recent years to more focus on well-being. And interestingly, though, this has been the well-being of the child. What our research attempts to do is to say that we cannot achieve well-being for children without well-being for relative caregivers. Relative caregivers most of the time, and we'll talk about that over the course of the next 3 days, can be highly vulnerable themselves. A lot of relative caregivers are disproportionately represented in terms of low resource communities, have faced a host of challenges themselves. And so taking on your relative's child adds an extra level of responsibility and vulnerability to many families that have already had to show resilience just to be able to navigate life's course. And still, despite these challenges, relative caregivers and the children that they care for are achieving remarkable outcomes. Relative caregivers possess a tremendous amount of strengths and capacities inherent to who they are. These are things that are natural to who they are, and some things that are supported through our intervention. But for the children, what we know about their well-being when they are placed, informal or formal, with relatives is that they develop a sense of self, cultural identification. They report a sense of being connected. We know that their homes are more stable, their placements are more stable than their counterparts, positive mental and behavioral health outcomes, and they achieve permanency. I want to underscore safety. For many years, we had to do a lot of dispelling of myths about relative caregivers not being the best choice. What the research tells us is that repeated maltreatment is least likely to occur with a relative caregiver than foster placement. And so let me say that again. For a long time, we have been hesitant to place children with relative caregivers. But what the data actually tells us is that relative caregiver placement has the lowest rate of repeated maltreatment than any other type of placement that we would have children in. So we know that safety is one of those well-being indicators that we achieve through this type of care. So just quickly, more benefits of kinship care. Physical well-being goes without saying. Our kids have to be taken care of first and primarily just in terms of daily provisions of life. Psychological well-being in terms of just belongingness, care and concern, direction, role modeling. These are all the things that caregivers do naturally. And imagine that if this is something that comes naturally, imagine that when a caregiver feels supported, when they are affirmed, when we're able to provide them with resources. Imagine how much more can be achieved for children and their outcomes when we have a focus and we put relative caregivers first and we're centered around their well-being so that they can achieve the best outcomes for the kids in their care. And then finally, religious, moral, lineage, and ethnic orientation. Our research and the research of other teams have shown that kids that are being reared in relative caregiver homes also have a direct connection and identification with their ethnic background and feel a sense of self-pride and acceptance. So a little bit about protective factors. You've heard me continue to allude to these. We think about protective factors on three levels: at the individual level, relationship level, and community level. So this is what we are trying to create when we talk about kinship care. We believe, and the research shows, that it is of itself an intervention. So kinship care is an intervention. Oftentimes we think, oh, kids have experienced trauma and kids have some challenges behind their behavior, and we need to get them in therapy and we need to get them a host of services. All of those things can be true. Yes, we are an advocate for wrapping services and supports around our kids so that they have the best outcome. But I also want to be clear that it is kinship care itself that is the intervention. It is the intervention and just as valuable and just as valid and needed as a therapeutic intervention, an outside intervention that one might refer a family to. And so what makes it an intervention? It's these protective factors that we're speaking of here. And so these are things that occur at the individual level, um, through relationships between the caregiver and the child, all the community level supports through extended family, through church, through friends, the network of others that are supporting the families as well too. Here, just a little bit more about the cultural and ethnic traditions associated with kinship care. We know that by and large, disproportionately, kinship care, especially informal kinship care, is prevalent in African American families. It is a longstanding tradition of African American families to care for your own. The sense of interconnectedness and strong cultural bounds is a prevalent report that you hear from children who have grown up in kinship care and they're adults and they report out their experiences. We hear this through narrative stories, through narrative methodology from caregivers themselves about the importance of their relatives and the upbringing that they had here. And so we talk about this in the context of African American families and other families of color because we know that they are disproportionately represented in the system. Many people have called for um, an abolishment of the child welfare system, largely because of some of the conditions that African American families face in particular. Our research, we are of the mindset that kinship care is an answer. Kinship care is a response to this tension that we see in formal public child welfare systems and the community. We know that when caregivers are supported, and I want to emphasize the word supported because sometimes we have a practice of removing children and placing them with relatives and not necessarily putting in the level of supports that would be expected. But when they are supported, children thrive, caregivers do well, they have a sense of self efficacy, they're motivated to continue and to be a permanent resource. And so we believe that it helps to preserve people's cultural and ethnic identification and preserve families as well. Okay, I'm really going to kind of buzz through some of these really fast here. This just talks about the journey. When we go through our simulations over the next couple days and you hear from the relative caregivers, that's the most important part. I want you to really focus in on what you hear, the stories, you know, how people came to the role of kinship care. It's a unique story for every family, a situation that should be valued and respected for each family. I know for myself, kinship care is personal and professional. I often tell people that I became a parent before I was a parent. I literally, in my 20s, helped my mother take care of my great nephews and my great niece. And then when she passed, my twin brother Ramon and I took on the primary caregiving role. And at the time, the kids ranged in age from 18 months to 5 years of age. And so literally here I was, a very young woman in my 20s taking care of an 18-month-old toddler and trying to navigate the system. With God's help and a big, strong, supportive family, we were able to do it. And the kids are healthy and strong and in their 30s today, doing really well. But the journey is unique and different for everyone. And part of what we do with our research is advocate that we respect every family's individual journey and the choices that that families make. So a little bit more here where the emphasis for this particular slide is what happens after becoming a kinship caregiver. Part of what got me into this work from a professional level is struggling as a relative caregiver myself. And my twin brother and I are saying, if I'm a social worker, you're a police officer, thank God we have resources. If we're struggling, how are other families managing these courts and these systems and these workers and all of this every single day if we're struggling? And so that kind of is what got me into this, because of just the major life transitions, the legal processes, everything that comes into play, and how it happens overnight. For us, it was like someone flipped on a switch, literally. I received a call one day from Child Haven. I lived in Clark County, Nevada, and our shelter system is called Child Haven in Las Vegas. And the voice on the other end of the phone was a familiar one, because she had been the kids' worker many times. And she said, your niece's kids are here with us again. They're here in Child Haven, and I want to know if you'll be a resource for the kids." And I immediately said yes. And I think that's what a lot of relative caregivers do, because that's your natural impulse. Of course, you are going to say yes. You love the kids, you see it as a responsibility to your family. Little did we know the journey that we were about to embark upon. And little did we know the whirlwind and the constant advocacy on behalf of the kids, the constant having to explain ourselves and situation before judges and workers. And so at one point I said, somebody's got to fix this system, and it may as well be me. So this became my life work, and really wanting to be a person to advocate for children and families, and to say, can we do this better? Is there a different way? How can we join with the community? How can we give caregivers voice and agency and report out what they're experiencing, so that we can change some of these practices for the better? And so the journey could be different for others, and you'll hear from some of my colleagues and liaisons over the next 3 days about what their journey looked like. And this is just some of those challenges that I've been hinting at, challenges around legal issues, needing resources and supports, managing risk factors. For my twin brother and I, our nephews, and our niece in particular, she was born addicted to crack cocaine, and neither one of us had experience with taking care of children, let alone children that had special needs. And so it was a whole new world of learning and understanding, and having to be patient and understanding what was going on with her physically and emotionally. And the boys as well. Our oldest nephew was very, very parentified. He had been accustomed to literally being the 5-year-old, getting up, making breakfast, changing diapers, doing things of that sort. And so we had to let him know, we've got you now. We've got you now, and build his trust so that he would let us step in and take care of his younger brother and his baby sister. And so many profound needs, things that we were just not prepared for, and had to navigate on our own, because this was during a time when relative care was frowned upon and there were no resources and support. And so, what is this puzzle of support? Over the next 2 days, you're going to hear about education system, legal systems, healthcare, financial systems, how we can leverage peer supports to support our families, the intervention of government and state. And then you're going to hear it from the informal side, where they actually don't have all of these resources, yet still have to interface with these systems as well. And so ultimately, and I'm going to start to wind down my talk here. Ultimately, what we're hoping to do is bring more awareness about what we frame a culture of kinship care. We believe that this is a responsive practice for formal systems, and it's a responsive way of being in our community to support families who are not formally involved with the system. And so, how do you build this culture of kinship care? We think it's built first with our values, what we place emphasis on. We fund what we value, right? We support what we value. It begins through a value-driven system. It has to be a socially just system. Part of the reason we advocate for kinship care is because of the disproportionality of people of color and children of color in the system. We believe that those families should be preserved, and this is one way to do that. A part of building a culture of kinship care is investing in the workforce, having a trained and sensitive workforce to realize that kinship care is an option and how they can support caregivers. A culture of empathy. So you'll see just through the screen here more components of what we think goes into building a culture of kinship care that you'll hear over the next 2 days. And then finally, I know I keep saying finally, but finally, this will be the slide before I transition over to my colleagues. And so you'll hear us talk a lot about kin first, think kin first. And this has become our mantra. This is what we're advocating with systems, with formal systems in particular, that kinship care should be the norm, not the exception. We're aiming to reduce and eliminate the need for regular foster care. Again, we realize the benefits of foster care. We are respectful of the role of foster care, and so I don't want to come across as though I'm disparaging foster care at all, because I'm not. It has its role, it has its place, but we believe that we can reduce the need for regular foster care. We're aiming for what we call a 50 for 50, all 50 states to reach and maintain a 50% minimum of placement with kinship caregivers. And so this comes about policy shifts, practice shifts, developing a workforce where there's specialized training around kinship caregivers, leveraging the knowledge of our caregivers themselves. They are a hidden resource. They are our best resource. They are the ones who are living this experience every day, and we have to listen to their voices. They are the ones that can inform us about how the practice and the policies can be more caring and conductive to those outcomes that we're trying to produce. And then finally, we believe that there is a role at the state and the federal level in terms of how we support families financially. Their families should not have to go without financial provisions. Relative caregivers should not be cast into poverty because they've taken on the extra responsibility of caring for their relatives' children. So we believe that there is a public responsibility too. This is a community responsibility, it's a collective responsibility so that children can grow up healthy, safe, and happy. So I think that that ends the slides, Amanda. We're going to transition into a discussion more about Kin Carolina. Much of Kin Carolina has developed from this overview that I provided, and we will stay on and take questions and thoughts towards the end, and take a look at the chat too, because I know some great comments and questions may have emerged there too. But again, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your interest in kinship care, and we want to be a resource for you in Kin Carolina. No matter where you are practicing or supporting families, we just have a bank of resources, and we'd love to enter into conversations and be a partner with you in your either personal or professional journey. Thank you so much for all that you do for our children and families.
Thank you so much, Ramona. There's lots of kind words coming in the chat for you. I have worked with Ramona for over 5 years, and every time you share your story, I'm blown away by the challenges that you face at such a young age, and knowing that yours is just one of millions of stories like that. So thank you for sharing. All right. So what we're going to do is tell you a little bit about Kin Carolina so that you have a framing for who we are and why we're here. We're going to start with a video. I think there's a sense of humility in kinship care. I think it's just what you would do if someone in your family, a child especially, didn't have a place to live, was going through something traumatic. Most people would probably take that child in and not need credit for it. But because of that, they're not getting the resources they need. They're not getting the services and payments and things that they deserve, probably because it's just assumed this is just what we do for our family. Kinship care is when a child's birth parents are not able to raise them for whatever reason. So another relative takes the child into their home and raises them as their guardian. I don't think a lot of people know the term kinship care. I think a lot of people do know kinship caregivers.
Throughout history, kinship care has always existed. We just always not have had the words for it or the supports for it.
And sometimes we have caregivers that don't even know that they're kinship caregivers.
My younger sister came to stay with me when I found out that she was pregnant. Within the first 2 months, I realized how much more of a struggle it was for her to care for this child. One day she just decided she had had enough, and I just took over. I never looked at it as the term kinship caregiver. That's a new term for me. I just felt like I needed to step in when I needed to step in.
Kin Carolina is a comprehensive support program for kinship caregivers in the Midlands region of South Carolina who are raising children with disabilities or a special health care need. We define that really broadly because we don't want people to be excluded. They don't have to have a diagnosis, but the program is for the caregivers, and we offer 4 components. The first is peer supports, so they get a one-on-one peer liaison, so it's mentorship from someone who's already walked the walk. We have monthly trainings, and we have a series of 6 trainings, and all of those topics came out of a needs assessment we did prior to starting the program, so we tried to make sure it was what our caregivers really needed and wanted to learn about. And then the final component is financial. So we actually offer our participants $450 a month for 6 months, which is the length of our program.
It made a difference for me. It's helped me in a lot of ways, and I can't thank you enough.
They are really doing caregiver person-centered analysis and research and making sure that it's not just a one-time handout, but it is a continued support, and that the children understand that there is a level of care that they're receiving, and it's not just someone leaving them by the wayside.
My only daughter and her husband died 9 months apart, and they left behind 6 children. It was a very challenging experience because here I am at 75 years old and starting all over again. I didn't know sometime we were going to get our next meal from. Kin Carolina came in and gave hope because I've got a family that I didn't have before that in my situation helped.
I am a product of kinship care here in Columbia, South Carolina. I say that with a lot of endearment because I am proud of the fact that I was reared in the Black tradition of the extended family. And when I think about my upbringing, I'm reminded of my wonderful 14 years with my own biological mother, who passed away very suddenly. However, her 2 sisters worked with my father and stepped in as my other mothers. And so when I think about my mother, I'm always reminded of my biological mother, but I'm also reminded of my 2 aunts.
When you're kind of caring for someone, a lot of people don't understand that comes with a lot of weight.
Foster parents are planning this out. They're making the decision that they want to be foster parents. They are planning out their homes. They are taking the trainings. They're completing all their requirements. And so they know this is coming. Whereas kinship caregivers do not know this is coming most times. Children are often going into kinship care under traumatic circumstances. Parental death, parental incarceration, substance use, homelessness, even military separation. There's so many things that could be traumatic to a young child and traumatic to that caregiver too. So I think they really need even more support because they're just going through a lot. And then they're expected to work miracles with no additional supports. It's really not fair.
You're having to make a decision, for that child, and you care for that child, and that's why people say yes. But on the other side of that yes is literally your entire life changes. You go home and now you're back in the house that was your house, but now that's the child's house too. So I think it just changes your day-to-day life so much. In kinship care, you don't have that time to prepare, and there's not even words for what that sacrifice is because it's truly like a day-by-day, hour-by-hour, breath-by-breath choice that caregivers make. And that one yes they made in the 20-minute decision, that's going to impact them for the rest of their lives.
Kinship families face a lot of challenges. They experience some increased financial hardship, increased parenting stress, decline in physical health, and more severe mental health issues. All this may contribute to worse outcomes of kinship caregivers and the children in kinship care. But fewer services are provided to them compared to their counterparts in foster care.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I've heard that saying before, and that's saying like, oh, if there's problems with the birth parent, then there must be other problems with the family. It's kind of like a non-sensitive way of explaining generational trauma. What the apple doesn't fall far from the tree doesn't account for is like the opportunity for growth and for healing. And what I've learned like in working with kinship families is kinship care can literally happen to anyone. Anyone can be put in this position, and for the child to be able to stay with family, someone who loves them, is such a strength to start with, and then just building from there.
The belief that children, particularly kids that become involved in the formal child and family system and experience maltreatment at the hands of their parents, that the source of that maltreatment must be a dysfunctional family where that dysfunction spreads throughout. Over the years, I've tried to put a spin on that, and we've proven with our research that families of origin are strong. They are willing to take in their relatives' children. And just because someone has experienced a hardship, it doesn't mean that we should judge an entire family. And in fact, we know that with support, the relative caregiver does a good job with these children.
Kinship care as a practice has evolved. 14 years ago, when I assumed custody of my niece and nephew, there were no liaisons. It was your DSS caseworker. Once the case was closed, you were left with the children and you had to fend for yourself.
Kin caregivers, they are very resilient. They want to provide the best care for their kids.
Let them know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that you're not in this alone.
Looking at my niece and nephew with smiles on their faces, even when they share that they miss their biological parents, having the conversations, having them live in a home where they have an opportunity to share what they feel, they have an opportunity to cry if they need to cry, and then there's an arm welcoming them, to hold them, to love them, and to remind them that everything is going to be okay.
Thank you everyone so much for watching our video and for the thoughtful comments that are in the chat. Just a very brief overview. We've probably given this already, but we will be going more in depth throughout the week. But as Ramona and I shared, the Duke Endowment has graciously funded us for 5 years. And our goal is to provide evidence-based supports and to build an evidence base for what we do for kinship caregivers, specifically who are raising children with disabilities. So specifically with children who have disabilities, and we found that's a really underserved population of an already underserved population. Now on our map here, we have started with the yellow Midlands region of South Carolina. And I guess this is our official announcement that we are moving into the Low Country. So the blue counties as well are where we are headed. But we do on a case-by-case basis, take people from counties that border these regions. We've highlighted some of our partners already, but this is a multi-university and organization team that has developed and implements and evaluates Kin Carolina. So we definitely want to highlight our friends and colleagues, some of whom are on the call today, from UNC School of Social Work, University of South Carolina, Kindred Hearts we mentioned for sure, Catholic University School of Social Work, The Ohio State University, and Arizona State University. So our criteria are that we take all kinship caregivers, so formal, informal, whatever, we will take you and support you. We do require that the child has been placed with a caregiver for at least a month just to get over that initial hurdle of entry into care. And because our program is 6 months long, it operates on a rolling basis. We do ask that caregivers are expected to remain in that care for a minimum of 6 months. We do require that the child has some type of complex or special healthcare need or a diagnosed disability, but a diagnosis is not required for entry into our program because we know that given all the trauma that families have experienced, sometimes coping with trauma can show up in ways that look a lot like a disability. And so sometimes there are not diagnoses for those things. So we have a very broad definition of disability and definitely are very inclusive. And I need to update this because it'll be resident of the Midlands or Low Country regions. And just to give you an overview, and you're going to experience some of these things through our simulations and conversations throughout the week. We have 3 therapeutic components in our program. We have one-on-one peer mentorship through a peer liaison, some of whom you'll hear from this week. We do peer support groups. These are all delivered virtually. And we also have 6 training sessions, 1 for each month of the program, from mostly local providers who share information such as self-care or what is trauma or the sensory system or how to navigate the IEP process. And then finally, we have a financial component, and that is very much thanks to our grant. We are able to give $450 a month to those who are in our program. We also have benefits consultations. We have an expense fund in case other things pop up in life that are unexpected and you need some other support. So we have tried to wrap around our caregivers. And I just want to give this very broad overview so that you have that context as we move forward. All right, before we begin our simulation, I know our team is in the chat. Are there any questions we need to address or a couple of questions for Ramona if there are any?
We did have one question. I think that would be good. What are our plans to move to other areas?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, we are just starting our expansion into the Low Country region. Through our grant, we do have plans to expand to North Carolina as well, and that is something we are working on. We know we have a lot of friends from North Carolina on our registration list, and so you may hear from us. But yeah, we are hopeful that in the future we can become an evidence-based practice, and then maybe further expansion from there.
We did have one other question in the Q&A, and a few people weighed in, but someone asked if it's possible to be both an informal and a formal caregiver at the same time.
Amanda, I can jump.
Yeah, please do.
And a lot of this is going to be bound by your jurisdiction and the laws where you are, and a lot of people can move back and forth in between these conditions. I take my family as an example. We were informal for a number of years, then we moved on to becoming licensed foster parents. We went through the training and we became foster parents, and then once the foster parent part was over for myself, I had my niece, my brother had the 2 boys. He went on to adopt the boys. And so we moved in and out of informal versus formal and different levels of permanency. So a lot of that is going to depend on the laws of your state and where you are. But it's very typical for families, particularly families that have been involved with the system for a number of years, the way my family was, to move in and out from informal to formal based on the children being removed and you having agreements with your relatives to take them in informally. So people go in and out of these systems.
So I think we can move on to our simulation, which we're really excited about. We want you to put yourself in the shoes of our caregivers, because this is an experience that it's one of those things that if you haven't been through it, you probably don't understand. So we're going to try and simulate that as much as possible. So imagine you've just taken in your relatives' children, you're struggling to find the supports they need. There's all these systems you have to navigate. And so we're going to watch one caregiver, Miss Teresa, one of our peer liaisons, we're going to watch her navigate this process. We also, just to highlight, we also have Rachel Hatton-Moore here from First Step, South Carolina, our own colleague, Angela Tobin, who weighed in but didn't get to introduce herself yet. So you'll be hearing from them as well in the simulation.
I'll be the service coordinator for Carolina. We mentioned Miss Teresa will be the caregiver, and then Rachel will be a First Steps representative. So ding, 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 ding.
Hello.
Hi, Miss Teresa. How are you today?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
Good. It's so great to meet you. I'm glad that you decided to enroll in Carolina. And today I really just wanted to spend some time getting to know you and see how we can best support you. If there's any services that you're looking for that we can connect you to. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions if that's okay.
Yes, that's fine.
All right. Well, first, can you share a little bit about yourself and who you're caring for?
Well, my name is Teresa. I am older. I'm over 50. I I got a call in the middle of the night one night from my daughter saying that there were some things going on and could I come and get the baby, which is my granddaughter. She at the time was 1.5. So I came to get the baby, but I didn't know it was a big old scene and everything. So I brought the baby with me. Social services got involved. So I kept her thinking that it was going to be temporary because I was an empty nester, living my life, just having fun. And then here we are, 3 years later, she's 4 years old, and I also have a 2-year-old brother. Along the way, the behaviors became a little unique, things that I wasn't used to. So
Granny, can I get a snack? Granny, I'm hungry.
Just a moment, honey. And that is Keela. She is a 4-year-old.
Granny, I'm hungry.
Okay,
Can I have a snack, please?
hold on just one moment, please?
Yeah, that's okay.
I'll be right back so we
That's
can
okay.
hear our call. Okay, I'm back. I appreciate you waiting. So it's a lot of things. I got caught off guard because I wasn't expecting this, but I do.
Yeah.
I love my grandchildren. I don't want to see them anywhere else, but it is difficult. It can be overwhelming. Like I said, I have two.
Stop hitting me, Granny. He's hitting me.
Okay, can we keep our hands to
Granny.
ourselves, please? You know, as you can see, there is a lot of attention, a lot of one-on-one.
That's a lot.
I have a lot of things that I would like to get for them, but I just don't know how.
What are some of those supports that might be helpful? I know you may be at home with them by yourself now, perhaps respite care, or what are some things that you may be looking for?
Respite care. I know a little bit about respite care, but that's like a babysitter coming in and watching the children while I go out, right?
Yeah, so respite care can look different. That's one example. There are also programs.
Granny, can I have some juice? I'm thirsty.
Just a moment, Kayla. I'm going to get some juice for you and your brother. Can you give me just 3 minutes, please?
No worries. You're doing great. I understand that you can't be in a room by yourself where it's quiet all the time. But another example could be like daycare programs, or there's times that providers can come to the house as well. And if your children do have higher needs, as you were explaining, there's also programs such as early intervention. There's a program for First Steps 4K for 4-year-olds, and that's a program where you could bring her in for the day, and she'll also be able to.
I want to watch Bluey. Can you put Bluey on, Granny?
1 second.
Granny, can I watch Bluey?
There's Bluey, baby. You and your brother sit down. Okay.
Thank you, Granny.
Okay.
You're
welcome.
Great. Yeah. So, yeah, no worries. If that's something you're interested in learning more about, we do have a connection there. I could provide the information and you could give them a call to see what their eligibility might be. And I could help you through if there's like an application process after that. But that might be a good place to start for you.
Sounds great. They sound like wonderful programs. And yes, I would definitely be interested.
Okay. I'll start with giving you the 4 Steps 4K and the early intervention information. So you can give Miss Rachel a call at 4 Steps and she'll give you more information, and then I'll follow back up with you after you talk with her to see if that's something you're interested in applying for.
Okay, sounds great. I appreciate your time again. I apologize for the inconvenience or what have you, but hopefully you understand. And
absolutely. No apologies needed. We're just glad that you're here with us and part of our program. So we'll make it work.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Ring, ring.
This is Rachel Hatton-Moore at South Carolina First Steps 4K. How can I help you today?
Hi, Rachel. My name is Teresa. I was given your number from a program called Ken Carolina, and I'm hoping that I have a 4-year-old granddaughter that lives with me. I'm hoping she's eligible for your program.
Granny, can I watch another Bluey?
Oh,
Can I
that
watch
would
another?
And if you don't mind, can you hold on for a quick second, please?
absolutely.
Okay, I'm back. I apologize.
No apologies needed. That's what we do here. So the first step is we are a 4K program in private centers that's state funded, and it's high quality free program, but there are eligibility requirements to participate. And so the first thing is your child must be 4 by September 1st of the school year, but we do enroll year round. So we'll need you to complete an application, and we do have that available.
Granny, can I have another snack? I'm still hungry.
Just a moment,
I want
please.
another snack.
Like I was saying, the application is online, so it's easy to complete, and there will be some documents that you need when you apply. We'll need all 3 of the IDs: a state ID, a Medicaid card, and a birth certificate for the child. You'll have to have those. You'll also have to have your
Granny, where is my snack? I'm hungry.
Just one moment, please. Okay, I'm back.
Oh, okay.
Again.
Great. Yeah. And so, there are income requirements. So you'll need to be, at the, federal poverty guideline levels for 200% to be in, to be Medicaid eligible and participate. And so, do you have any questions about that so far?
When you say 200% poverty, that means all of us, because I do receive aid for the children, but not myself.
Well, if the children receive Medicaid, have a Medicaid card, or if they're in, official foster care, they would qualify as well. So, just feel free to fill.
Granny, I gotta go potty, but I can do it.
And we can look at all that.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, so just go ahead and submit those documents. We'll take a look, and we'll determine the eligibility and then help you however we can.
Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
You too. Do you have all of the identification documents you need, or do you have any questions about that?
Well, I have no, I do not have all the information that I need, but I was trying not to take all your time because we may keep getting interrupted. I have no idea. I don't have the birth certificates. I wasn't given that.
Okay, well, that's okay. We can do what we call as long as you have
Granny, I went potty.
Social security number.
Okay.
If you have the child's social security number, we can do what's called a provisional acceptance, and then you can provide the birth certificate within 30 days. And that should be enough time for you to get it from, Vital Records at the Department of Public Health.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so just go ahead and fill out that application online. If you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call. We're happy to help however we can.
Okay, sounds great. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, and I'm also going to email this to you. So, just give me your email address before you go, and I'll make sure you have all of this by email because I know it's a lot to get at once. I'll also put the link in there for the application.
Awesome. Okay.
Granny, can you keep Bluey on?
Bluey's on. So that was my email address. If you can send it to that email address, I greatly appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you so much, Miss Teresa. Have a wonderful day.
You're more than welcome, Miss Rachel. Bye-bye.
Ding, 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 ding.
Hello.
Hi, Miss Teresa. How are you doing?
Oh, Miss Angela, I'm so glad. It's like I just get to put my feet up. My kids are down for a nap, and oh my gosh, perfect timing.
Oh, that is great. Well, I will try and keep this quick so you can have some quiet time to yourself as well. But I know there is a lot of information you got today, so I just wanted to check in if you were able to follow up, if you need any assistance, and just any way that I could help with getting you connected to the resources.
Well, I did call the Miss, I believe her name was Miss Rachel at the first steps, and I'm very interested in that program, but there's a list of things that I have to get. It's like just hearing them was overwhelming. birth certificate, kids' IDs, and um, paperwork to support our income and different things like that. Could you help me with that?
Absolutely. We can go through what you have, and I think it'd be good for us to get on a meeting with your peer liaison too, because they may have gone through the process and can help walk you through as well. But I know it can be overwhelming to get all those steps at once, so we can break it down one by one to see how we can guide you through that process to make sure you get connected. But I am glad that you are interested, and I know with your kids at home, sometimes it's a lot of information to take in, so we'll make sure that we can figure out a plan for you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your help so much. Just, I don't know what I would do because I was just trying to figure out what to do, but you guys have all the answers. I appreciate it.
Of course. And we may not have all the answers, but we're committed to finding them and just being with you throughout the process. And I hope this could be a resource and you could have some more quiet time to yourself in the future, because I imagine it's a lot for you to be on as a caregiver all the time. So we're just glad that you reached out, and we're excited to keep supporting you with Kin Carolina.
I appreciate you again. And I thank you for your time.
Great. We'll touch base soon. Bye, Miss Teresa.
Goodbye.
All right. End scene.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Miss Teresa, Rachel, and Angela. Wonderful job. We're definitely getting some comments that in the chat that is very relatable. So in the chat, feel free to share, like, how would you react if you were Miss Teresa? That's a lot. It's a lot to handle. Definitely want to hear your thoughts about that. Miss Teresa earns Mother of the Year.
I see something from Lee Patterson about having funds to cover birth certificates at the moment. That's excellent. And also, that is having those birth certificates is a big barrier to a lot of kinship families because they don't necessarily receive all of the vital documents or official paperwork for the child. And so, getting those can oftentimes be a challenge and a barrier to participating in formal services.
Thanks, Rachel. A few people said I felt supported just listening. I love that. And we do hope that even just being able to hear our caregivers does take the edge off all of that stress just a little bit. I would feel supported, overwhelmed, a lot of overwhelm for sure. Yes, she was very patient, wasn't she? Does anyone have any questions? I saw one question that we can definitely address at the end about, it came up a couple of times about the online services, but any questions pertaining to this simulation?
Continuing to ask what they need. Yes, that can be very important. And I think with kinship care, it can be so complex because something like getting enrolled in a program, like there could be barriers there that aren't there for other families, like the birth certificate that we talked about. So we find that in a lot of different ways, and even school enrollment too. So that's why it can make it even more overwhelming.
So the question I did want to address that's a little bit different was, it came up a couple of times about our program being mostly virtual, and what do we do to support caregivers who may be older, less inclined to use technology, maybe don't have email. We actually just encountered this recently. Angela, do you want to just share a little bit?
Yes, that is a great question. It can be very real. We know with COVID, there was a big shift towards technology. So fortunately, a lot more people are comfortable and may have access to that. But with Kin Carolina, we really prioritize accessibility. So for example, we had a caregiver use her daughter's email to reach out to us and say she was interested. And we've been corresponding with her using that preferred email. We do also use a text messaging system that we're implementing so we can provide both email and text updates to caregivers. So trying to connect with them in different ways. There are some things that would require internet connection, but we know there are internet hotspots, perhaps that caregivers can connect to. On Zoom, there's always a call-in option, which is helpful. So again, we try to provide caregivers all the options. The biggest thing is we also let them know what to expect up front so they can decide if it's a good fit for them. So we'll set up a meeting with them, and it's a time for us to get to know the caregivers and for them to get to know us, because they're also interviewing us in our program. And we have a consent form we go through with them. And in that form, we lay out exactly what is expected for the program, including connecting virtually in those online support groups. And in orientation, we walk through all of that as well once they're in the program. But we're really all about problem solving and meeting caregivers where they are. So if there's a barrier, we're committed to finding a solution so we can be inclusive to caregivers and be able to have them participate. And ultimately, it is their decision what the best fit is, but we have been successful, I think, in supporting caregivers who may not have like a technological disposition, but we are able to make accommodations and meet them where they are while still having the expectations for participation. So we're happy to connect with anyone and just share more as well.
Thanks so much, Angela. Well, for the sake of time, I mean, I think this is something we could keep discussing. It's a good thing we have 2 more sessions this week. If you can, share a takeaway or something that you're planning to implement in your work, if that's relevant, that you took away from today's session, we'd love to hear. Our video is on our website, so you can definitely share it widely. Thank you so much. Yes, we're all about referrals. Our program is ongoing, so we're just always in recruitment mode and definitely have plenty of room for more caregivers.
Can we preview tomorrow a little bit as people are responding?
Sure.
So tomorrow will be our peer support focus session. So we'll have another simulation that's focused more on our peer support aspect. So you can see how peer liaison works, how we do the support groups. Just as an example, you'll hear some more about kinship family dynamics, which is often not talked about, but such an important part of kinship care. So the conversation will be continued tomorrow. And
yes, these are great takeaways. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for sharing your reflections as well.
Yes.
I love someone who's in the hospital and the healthcare system. That's such an important connection to families too. Oh, I'll share the link again.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Angela. It's just... And that should be emailed to you as well, in case you didn't get it now.
The Zoom, they'll get a direct email with their evaluation.
They should. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure I set it up that way.
Yeah. I registered, so I'll tell you if I got one, and that'll be it. We'll know if it works.
Thanks.
I won't do the evaluation, but I'll tell you if I got one.
Thank you, Joseph. I saw your comment about the amount of money we've tried to make available to our caregivers. That is a huge priority for us. The biggest part of our grant went to caregivers. That is definitely, we know how many costs come up to just survive when you suddenly take in children. And we wanted to try and offset that and see how that impacted our caregivers' well-being.
I did see someone said kinship care is the intervention on here. I love that comment.
Kinship care is not for the faint of heart. That is definitely true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of these takeaways. We're so glad that you enjoyed it and learned a little bit more about kinship care, and hopefully it'll help us just wrap around the caregivers in our communities.
And also, too, if you're interested in learning more about Kin Carolina at your organization, please do reach out to Amanda. We do offer presentations to organizations. We would love to connect more. And someone asked earlier, how do you connect to informal families? Really, the answer is the people on here right now, word of mouth, and the connection through organizations and different systems is really how we get connected to caregivers. So we would love to connect with your organization more and have you all help us share the word as well.
Well, thank you everyone so much. If there are any last questions, we can stay on, but otherwise we will see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock. I got the 6 o'clock p.m. And we look forward to sharing more of our caregivers and peer liaison stories with you and doing some more simulations then. So thank you very much.